Hello, everyone, and welcome to KETK Plus. I'm your host, Paulina Mata, and today we'll be taking a look at a study that found that an ant-sized jellyfish is capable of reversing its aging and restarting its life. Here to talk about the research with us is Dr. Maria Milieta from the Texas A&M University at Galveston. Let's bring her in. Hi, Dr. Milieta. How are you doing today?
I am doing good, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I've really been looking forward to discussing this jellyfish. And I'm totally going to butcher the pronunciation. So, Dr. Milieta, could you say its scientific name for us?
Turritopsis dohrnii.
Tupos? Yeah.
Turritopsis
Turritopsis
dohrnii.
dohrnii.
Yeah,
Okay,
good.
well, I'll probably just stick to calling it the immortal jellyfish if that's all right. But let's get started. So, Dr. Milieta, would you like to start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your role at Texas A&M University at Galveston?
Yes, I'm an associate professor in the Department of Marine Biology, and I study jellyfish in general, including the immortal jellyfish, Turritopsis dohrnii.
Yeah, and how did you come across this jellyfish, or how did this become your research niche?
So I come from Italy, from southern Italy, and one of the main laboratory that discovered this jellyfish, this incredible life cycle, is from southern Italy. So I grew up as a student in this laboratory, and we would go out diving and collecting jellyfish in general, and we would find very often Turritopsis. And so I grew up playing with Turritopsis in the lab, inducing the life cycle reversal, and so I've known of this species for a very long time. And when I got to have my own lab at Texas A&M University at Galveston, then there were so many unanswered questions about these animals and the capabilities that they have that I decided to focus a lot of energy into understanding the immortal jellyfish.
Nice. And how long have you been working on this?
So I started as an undergraduate, so many, many years ago. And then during my PhD, I was working on something else, but I had a small side project on Turritopsis. So we're talking about 20 plus years ago. And I published my first paper as a side project. I was traveling around the world, and so I was collecting animals everywhere. And I was finding Turritopsis all around the world. And so I studied the evolution of this animal, and I published this paper. I think it was 2006 or so. That was my first paper on Turritopsis. And then I've studied it since. So some good 20 years.
That's a really long time, and I'm sure you put a lot of work into this. So tell us a little bit about this jellyfish. How does this work? How is a jellyfish regenerative?
So this is a small hydrozoan jellyfish, closely related to other jellyfish and to corals as well. And it was discovered, the species, in the 19th century. And it's famous because of its life cycle reversal. So under certain stressful conditions, it can revert from a mature adult jellyfish into the juvenile that we call the polyp. And so it effectively restarts its life cycle again. And so, as you know, most animals age in one direction only. They are born, they become adults, they reproduce eventually, and then they age and die. Now, Turritopsis can go back in the opposite direction, and so even after reproduction, it's able to rejuvenate itself. And so it resets its developmental clock, which is an amazing feature for any animal. Now, it's not immortal in the superior sense, and it's not immortal literally. It's not invincible. It can die. It can be killed by predators or by some extreme circumstances, but they can still reverse from a juvenile to an adult, from an adult to a juvenile, and so they can potentially avoid aging also at the cellular level.
That is so interesting to me, especially because we don't really see that like at all in humans or in other
Exactly.
animals. So why do they need to become regenerative? What do you think led to this happening to
So,
them?
yes, that's a very good question. The why those animals evolved these features. And even more interesting question to me is why other animals have evolved the same feature. There are other jellyfish that are very similar to this Turritopsis that are not able to regenerate that like Turritopsis. And so the why is a very hard question to answer because evolution is a randomness in itself. And so it's very hard to understand, but we can definitely see an advantage in being immortal. For example, we know that Turritopsis has been introduced in many basins around the world, probably through ballast waters and ships. And so you can imagine now being immortal and being able to survive stressors during the trip from one location to the other may have given this species an advantage to colonize new environments. And so you can see the advantage definitely in having a life cycle that's resistant to stressors, that allows the animal to rejuvenate itself and produce hundreds of new medusa as a response.
And let's get really technical here. So what is the part that's regenerating? Is it their cells?
So that's a very good question, and that the entire body regenerate into a juvenile, but there is something at the level of the cells that's equally extraordinary. So there is some cellular reprogramming that goes on in all this life cycle reversal. So it means that the cells in Turritopsis can change their identity as we go from the dying old jellyfish to the juvenile polyp. And so imagine a differentiated adult cell that can transform into another type of cell that is needed at that moment. This process is called cellular transdifferentiation. It's the holy grail of regeneration in general. Now, for example, human cells are not able to do that. Can artificially induce a cell to change its fate, a human cell, under laboratory conditions. But now you have this animal that does it naturally, right, in response to natural stressors, and it does so in a very small amount of time. If you were to look at the entire cycle from a dying jellyfish or a stressed jellyfish to the polyp, you would see 24 hours, 48 hours, this happening really quickly. And so they can reprogram their cells in a very small amount of time. And so we are trying to study how the cell reprogram themselves naturally in this animal, because we think that understanding this process can teach us some fundamental lessons about aging, about regeneration, and about cellular reprogramming in general in all the organisms.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on this a little bit. Humans don't have this capability in their cells, but what can we learn from this and maybe take into our own health from this?
Yes, so this is basic science that we're doing on a jellyfish, but jellyfish and humans have a lot of genes in common. And so they have genes and proteins in common. And so understanding how some proteins and some genes participate to this cycle in this animal may help understand why they don't do the same thing in humans. So now those pathways are modified in a very simple animal like jellyfish and not in humans. Now, studying this pathway in humans may be very hard. We have here a model system that's very simple, that can be manipulated in the lab very easily, that in 24 hours reprogram its entire body and its cells. And so studying the cells and the DNA of those animals can teach us something about general processes on how the cells, they change, but they maintain their integrity, right? They don't degrade through time. And so this is a pretty general process that we can apply. We can apply what we learn in Turritopsis to all possible organisms because we have so many genes in common still with humans and vertebrates.
Yeah, and this next question is a little bit out there, and we kind of touched on it about that humans don't have this capability, but maybe not immortal life, but how would we be able to learn and apply this to other aspects of our life? Because right now I know Botox and cosmetic surgeries that make people look younger are really popular. So how could this like fit into that?
Okay, so this is basic science, and we're talking about a jellyfish. There is a lip to medicine that is possible, that is exciting, but it's very long, very uncertain as we go from studying jellyfish to applying what we learn to other organisms, vertebrates, and then eventually humans. There is so much work, so many trials, so much research that needs to go in that direction, and so we can learn the processes at the molecular level, and those processes, once we understand them in a very simple animal like Turritopsis, we can target those processes for other organisms, for regeneration in other organisms, including possibly vertebrates and biology. We can apply them in regeneration, aging, and biotechnology. But this is the first step. And so going from the jellyfish to the aging process in humans is a possibly in the future, but it's a long leap and it will take a lot of work. Now, what that means for uh, how we think about regeneration in general, I think it's good to understand that nature has found solution to some problems that we're interested in. And so to me, this tells us that we need to look around at the biodiversity out there. There are thousands of species that we haven't even discovered yet, that we don't know what they do. And so we really don't have a understanding of what nature can do to solve some problems that are so fundamental to us, right? Aging, senescence, regeneration. And so to me, it tells us that we have to go back and look at nature to find answers for problems that we are still facing.
Wow, I really love that answer. And where does this take your future research? What's the next step for you in this study, and how does it further marine life studies?
So part of the studies, part of my future will be to continue to study this jellyfish. This jellyfish is very small; it's hard to find. So there are a lot of challenges that come with the studying of Turritopsis, and so in a way, it's an act of love to keep studying this animal because it's so challenging. But the lab is devoted to that, and we collect it, and we'll keep studying the genetic mechanisms and how this animal responds to different stressors, and why some species can rejuvenate while others do not. And part of the lab is interested in biodiversity in general, right? Go back and be the explorers, collect the animals, bring them in the lab, describe them for the first time, and understand their capabilities. I get asked the question very often, how many animals are out there that are able to do this kind of reversal? And the truth is, for now, we believe Turritopsis is pretty unique in its capabilities, but there are thousands of species within the same group as Turritopsis that we haven't looked at. And so part of the lab is really devoted to understand the biodiversity, going back in the ocean, collect the animals and study the animals at the very basic level to see what are their capabilities. Because I believe that among those thousands of species, there's some that can do some very exceptional things, and we can use them as rising model systems to ask questions that are of general interest for humans.
That is so cool, and I hope that all your future research does really well. And as we wrap up, is there anything you would like to add about your research or the jellyfish that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
Jellyfish are cool, and a lot of people see those animals are the scary creatures that you don't want to see when you are vacationing, but they are fascinating. And so they have incredible capabilities. They can regenerate part of the body. Some of them are immortal, like Turritopsis. And so I hope people understand that jellyfish are beautiful and they're worth studying for so many reasons.
Well, thank you so much for bringing this topic to us and joining us, Dr. Milieta. We really appreciate the chance to talk to you and learn more about your research today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and to our viewers, thank you for watching KETK Plus. I'm Paulina Mata, and I'll see you next time.